There are only two genders, male and female.
Has the society fallen so far that require a judge to decide in a court of law whether you are a man or a woman?
It doesn't really matter because this isn't a decision that should be made by the government. This is something that should be left to people and families to make with their medical providers.
We are diving into a bombshell ruling from the UK Supreme Court that has got everyone talking.
Unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
In other words, the legal definition of a woman is now officially tied to biological sex, excluding transgender women.
This is not about prejudice or bigotry, as some people would say. It's just about saying that there are differences, and biology is one of those differences.
In 2025, we've reached a point where courts are deciding who counts as a woman. How did we get here? Is this a victory for women's rights or a sign society has lost its way? Stick around as we unpack this historic decision, why it matters, and what it means for the future. On April 16, 2025, the UK Supreme Court unanimously ruled that under the Equality Act 2010, the terms woman and sex refer to biological women and biological sex, not gender identity or gender recognition certificates or GRCs. These came from a case brought by For Women Scotland, a group backed by none other than J.K. Rowling, who's been vocal on this issue. They challenged Scottish laws that included trans women with GRCs in quotas for women on public boards. The court said, nope, a woman is someone born female.
The judges have said what we always believed to be the case, that women are protected by their biological sex, that sex is real, and that women can now feel safe that services and spaces designated for women are for women.
This ruling means trans women, even those legally recognized as female, can be excluded from women-only spaces like bathrooms, shelters, or sports teams if it is proportionate. It is a landmark decision, and it has sparked celebrations from women's rights campaigners and backlash from trans rights advocates.
In the judgment, it was read out that the problem of any other interpretation was that it would have given trans people more rights than other people. So this just sets it back to square one. Everyone has equal rights. Not one group is privileged over another.
Why does a court have to step in to define something as basic as a woman in the first place?
I just thought, who decided that this was okay to teach our children?
Let's talk about how we got to this point. The fact that the UK's highest court had to rule on what a woman is shows how muddled our society has become. Over the past decade, the push for inclusivity has blurred lines between sex and gender. Laws like the Equality Act were meant to protect against discrimination, but they have been stretched to the point where biological realities like the need for women-only spaces got sidelined.
All those beautiful qualities that make young girls, beautiful girls and women, are being basically vilified. The things that make our boys boys are being, taken from them. So things of equating young men to being strong protectors is something that's now evil.
Cases like Isla Brisson, a trans woman and convicted rapist initially sent to a women's prison, lit a fire under this debate.
You see yourself as the victim in this situation. You are not. It is plain that you present a particularly significant risk to any woman with whom you form a relationship.
It exposed how policies prioritizing gender identity over biology can put women's safety at risk. This is not about denying trans people's existence or rights. Let's be clear, the court itself said trans folks are still protected against discrimination. But when society cannot agree on basic definitions, we end up in chaos.
The choices we make, some boys like dressing up, some girls like catching.
Politicians dodge the hard questions, leaving it to judges to clean up the mess. That is not progress, it is a failure of leadership. We have regressed to a point where legislation, common sense, and that's a wake-up call for all of us. Now let's talk about why this ruling is being hailed as a massive win for women. For Women Scotland and others argued that if trans women with GRCs were legally treated as women, it will erode protections for biological women, sex spaces like domestic violence shelters, hospital wards, or even sports. The court agreed, saying sex is binary and biology matters when it comes to these protections. Women's rights campaigners are calling it a watershed moment because it clarifies that spaces designed for biological women, where privacy, safety, or fairness are critical.
In order for lesbians' rights, our rights as same-sex attracted women to be protected by the law, we need to be able to say that women are biological women, not men who say that they are women.
Now it means that I can go back to my lesbian walking group, for example, and say it's all right, you can stop worrying about not letting men in. The law is on our side. We're allowed to just walk with other lesbian women without having to include men in that or be frightened of being taken to court.
J.K. Rowling called it a victory for the right of women and girls across the UK, and she has got a point. This ruling empowers women to assert their boundaries without being labelled as bigots. It is a step toward ensuring that women's voices, often drowned out in this debate, are heard loud and clear. So what is next? This ruling does not just affect Scotland, it is a game changer for the whole UK. Public bodies like NHS, prisons and schools will get new guidance to prioritize biological sex in single-sex spaces. For instance, the British Transport Police already said trans women in custody will be searched by male officers. Women's sports could see stricter rules too, building on recent moves by groups like English Football Association. But it is not all rosy. Trans rights groups like Stonewall and Transaction are sounding the alarm, saying these could exclude trans women from public life and amplify discrimination. They are worried about access to things like women's refuges or even public bathrooms. The debate is far from over, and it is likely to heat up ahead of Scotland's 2026 election. Plus, there is a talk of reviewing the Equality Act itself to address these tensions. For women, this ruling restores clarity and protects hard-won rights. For society, it is a chance to have an honest conversation about balancing inclusion with reality. That is the story of the UK Supreme Court ruling, a decision that is both a win for women and a mirror to society's confusion. What do you think? Is this a step forward or a step back? Drop your thoughts. Newsroom, Maisha TV, Reader Kering Chebet.